I sincerely used to believe that I was the ugliest person that there ever was. And what we're going to be diving into today is what caused that and how do you overcome feelings and beliefs like that.
The future is super bright, that's for sure. But one of the biggest fears that we keep hearing come up again and again is that which is on the rise, which is the fear of being ugly, the fear of being unattractive, the fear of not being able to really hook someone's attention and keep it and have it stick around. Let's get into this in this episode.
Hey everybody, what is going on? It's Bianca.
Welcome back, Evolvers. It's Emilia.
So as I mentioned in the little opener there, back in the day, and I'm not 100% healed from this, but back in the day, I sincerely used to believe that I was hideous. I would literally look in the mirror and hysterically cry, telling myself how ugly I was and everyone was so much better looking than me and nobody was ever going to want me because of my appearance and how I looked. I developed eating disordered behavior as a result of it, and I really struggled every time I had to get dressed, every time I had to go somewhere, because I didn't want to be perceived and I didn't want to have to get dressed and I didn't want to have to put in the effort because I knew I was going to feel bad about myself no matter what I did. And it started from a really, really young age. And if I'm being honest, this only changed within the last year or so. I really started doing the work on this belief. One of the things that Emilia and I are deeply, deeply concerned about is, number one, so many people are going through this. So many people, beauty and attractiveness and how you look has become one of the biggest things that everybody and their mother is focusing on. And it's become, honestly, an epidemic of the measures in which people will go to quote unquote look good. We talked in the last episode about the dope dress principle and how do you feel good in your body and kind of the more like positive sides of it. What I want to dive into today, and I'm going to pick your brain on this a little bit because I know you've done so much research on this, is what are the implications of kind of the darker side of this, living in a world that is so focused on beauty and beauty standards, and what are the long-term implications of it? We are seeing now more than ever, people are using, there's very few photos that are unfiltered. There's very few people that are not getting plastic surgery or injections or spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just on their appearance and nothing else, and beauty products and skin products and all of that, on clothes, on fast shopping. Basically, the primary thing determining so many people's worth is their appearance. And again, I was one of them, so I'm not saying this from a high moral ground. I struggled with it too. Why is this such an issue and why should people care? I also do need to add this here because I know a lot of people are probably thinking this. I know a lot of you might be watching this right now and you're saying, who the hell are you two to be talking about this when you guys look the way that you do? Yeah, good for you. You guys can go and talk about an episode on why you shouldn't care about how you look. That's also why I started this episode off the way that I did and with the struggles that I had, because it doesn't matter what you look like. We all struggle with this. This isn't just about what you look like. It's about the narratives that we have and the detrimental consequences of those narratives and the severe impact that they are having on our brains and the way that we live our lives. So put your judgment aside, put your villainization of Emilia and I aside, this is still really valuable, and there's a lot you're going to be able to take away from this. So, why is this so bad, and why should people care? Why is it so wrong to get all the plastic surgery and the fillers and all of the social media editing and all of that? Like, why should people give a shit? Why shouldn't they feel good? Quote unquote. That's the narrative.
Yeah, I do. And I'm so grateful that you opened with that, because, and named also how much the unconscious narratives or thoughts that people will have that we've already heard to date, right? Like, you guys look the way that you do. How do you have any regard? All that happy jazz. So, this is the topic that we had actually dove deep into in Evolve Movie Club. So I believe by the time that this episode will have launched, we will have already had, or Movie Club already happened. And what I think is really important to mention in this episode is a movie that actually literally talks about this, that has not gotten a lot of traction from my perspective. And when you look at the data, it's only rated on IMDb at a 4.7 out of 10, which is just wild. So if you haven't heard it, so it's the movie is called Uglies, and it's this pretty much the plot is a world in this dystopian future. Actually, I believe it's set 300 years from today, where it wipes out all this physical differences between humans and makes everyone pretty. So it's a trilogy that's actually written by Scott Westerfield, who is such a futurist by nature, and it's a novel series that I actually picked up when I was in middle school. I believe the novel series launched in 2005. And so I remember reading that and being just blown away about how these existential, actual really critical narratives are being brought forward in this book, because at the time, right, I'm in middle school. That's one of the most psychologically impactful times when it comes to our self-esteem, right? And whether you're in grade school or you're in middle school or you're in high school or you're even, into these 30s and 40s and 50s, right? Like attraction, attention, feeling pretty, feeling beautiful, feeling attractive, feeling ugly, like it's a big conversation. And why this matters and why I mentioned this movie, because this movie actually really does a beautiful job from my perspective, highlighting the psychological, the emotional, and the cultural impacts of what happens when we have all of these artificial means of wiping out the perceived, quote unquote, and I'm doing air quotes for anyone that's listening to this on audio, the ugly, quote unquote, components of what our genetic codes are. So in the movie, it shows how the main character, her name, I believe it is Tally. Her I believe she gets she inherits brown eyes. She's kind of, quote unquote, a very basic looking individual, and all of her friends, when they turn 16, they go into the, quote unquote, capital, if you will, of the city, and they go through this wild surgery where they get whatever color eyes that she wants, her hair, she gets all this surgery done. And all of her friends go into the city and get this done because she's the youngest of all of her friends. And there's so much alienation, because what it depicts in the movie is that there's this beauty brainwashing that happens, that if you're not pretty, which is what they call people post-surgery and post all this artificial, even like down to the the bone structure of their face and their ribs and all that stuff, which it's not that far out, to be honest, when we look at what's happening now.
People literally do that now.
Get ribs removed from their rib cage to make their waists smaller, get BBLs to make their butts bigger. They have hair placed and all these. And again, I'm not passing judgment on this from an intrinsic standpoint. What I want to talk about on this episode, and what I think is incredibly important as a call and an ode to what we hear from this community and what we see in the research, is how is this impacting us psychologically? How is this impacting us emotionally? And how is this impacting us at some of the most unconscious levels that we're not even aware of right now, right? In an episode we talked about a couple episodes ago about how AI and technology is impacting us mental health wise. And in an episode to come, we'll be talking about the loneliness pandemic. And when we overlay the artificial changes to our actual physical appearance, that has a psychological impact that is extremely detrimental. And so what we do see in the data right now is it is the artificial degradation of what is quote unquote natural, right? Your natural beauty that you are inherently born with, right? No changes, no changing your eye color, no getting extensions or lashes, no getting hair like replacements or lip injections or Botox or whatever, right? Because there's more and more people leaning into those artificial beauty, quote unquote, enhancers, if you will, it is having a severe effect on those quote unquote people that are feeling that left behind. Because if you were to recognize that unconsciously, we are all comparing ourselves to what's called our peer group, or our social comparison group. And when there's one person, just picture yourself in middle school comparing to the quote unquote pretty girl, right? That's an upwards comparison. You feel as though you are below that quote unquote pretty person because that pretty person gets more attention maybe than you. And that has you feeling as the quote unquote ugly duckling, less levels of self-esteem that then starts to increase the way in which you think about yourself, increasing depression and anxiety, increasing all of these coping behaviors that are end up maladaptive in order to and efforts to get more attention because you feel overshadowed and overlooked.
When you're on a journey of self-discovery or self-rediscovery, it's very important to have a support system in place. And that's where a group like Evolve comes in with their acceptance and advice and different people from different walks of life who can offer different perspectives for you to help you find your self-worth and aid in your journey of wellness. It's important and essential.
And what that starts to snowball into is all of these attempts short term to try to feel that momentary quote unquote perception of attention that you're comparing to, you think that they get. So for example, right, you might be listening to this episode and doing an upwards comparison to your quote unquote perceived attractiveness to Bianca and I, right? You might be having this experience of villainizing of how the hell could you guys talk about this, right? That is because you have a perception of what we as quote unquote beautiful women go through in this world. And as if it's so much better of a life than yours, perhaps, right? And I know I'll probably get hate for even just saying that. So with that being said.
It's true. And that the only way to have a good life is by being attractive.
Right. Which couldn't be more like, it's not true. If you talk to anyone that does statistically have features that are culturally and gender perceived, which by the way, attraction and beauty is literally just perception, right? It is perception of a group think. If you were to talk to someone like that about what their life has looked like as a result of that quote unquote statistical attraction, you would be blown away by their life experiences and you would feel to some extent kind of dumb of what you thought their life actually looked like through their eyes, through their experiences.
LOL.
So with that being said, again, impacts this movie and what we talked about in Movie Club. There was 3 questions that we brought up because it's a discussion that honestly, I don't think this futuristic mindset is that far out. We're literally experiencing it right now and it's 2025 and we are just at the very beginning.
Before you go into the questions, can I ask you another question? Because I do think this is important. I've had conversations like this with a lot of people and they've said, well, if this makes me feel good about myself, if I'm not comparing to other people, and this actually does make me feel good about myself, why shouldn't I do it? If I have a really big nose and I believe that getting my nose done is sincerely going to make me feel better and happier, what's wrong with that? I've also had people say, well, then isn't the gym exactly like that? Because your body is your body. And if you're exercising, then you're changing the way your body looks. Isn't that exactly the same thing? So why shouldn't I go get my nose done or hair plugs put in or my lips filled the way that you go and build or shrink your body?
It's a fair question. And honestly, I understand where that's coming from because it's like you have that belief that this is going to be the end all be all. It's going to be the means to the end, which is the reduction of this perceived suffering or pain that you have, which is not being as good as or pretty as or as attractive as or getting as much attention or likes or whatever it is as whoever you're comparing to. However, you do not have 100% certainty that that's actually going to fulfill that quote unquote gaping hole, because what that is a temporary solution to a deeper issue. So for example, even that, the body dissatisfaction and negative self-talk, that's not going to go away just because you got your lips done. That's not going to go away because you get hair plugs. That's not going to go away because all of a sudden you decided to spend money and go to do the research and, I don't know, maybe get a better smile, whatever. That's not going to go away, because what's at the core of that is you're not addressing the root. You're not addressing the critical self-talk. You're not addressing why that body dissatisfaction or why that body dysmorphia is there in your psychology in the first place. And so you're not even taking into consideration the cultural context that is influencing why you have all of these belief systems about yourself. It's just going to get worse, ironically. And that's what this movie also shows. It actually does get worse because it's never going to satiate long term what it is that you believe it's going to satiate. Why? Because it's rooted in emotions, which emotions is subjectivity. Now that emotion, that thought pattern that's dictating that emotion might be pervasive and persisting because you are constantly ruminating and spiraling on it, right? It is very different than someone who is going to the gym to try to improve their health, right? Because that is intrinsically motivated versus someone who is trying to make sure that they get more attention, which is an extrinsic motivator. And studies consistently show extrinsic motivators are just short-term hits. It's just those short-term hits that are always trying to be grasped at, but you never fully satiate what is the driver underneath that. It's because you don't feel good enough. It's because you don't feel worthy. It's because you don't feel loved. You don't feel wanted, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just going to be the next thing that you're going to have to delude yourself into this narrative that's going to satiate that, which then those delusions, those belief systems get bigger and bigger. And what's wound up inside of that is self-shame, is self-pity, is all of these really, really negative implications. That's why depression, that's why anxiety, that's why social withdrawal and isolation begins. That's why the emotional distress, when you actually look at someone who has a central nervous system that struggles with that stuff, it's off the charts in terms of the biomarkers that show the emotional distress, the actual biological mitochondrial stress indicators. So I think for anyone that is struggling in this arena, number one, it's so important to say you're not alone. Number two, the short-term fix that looks and feels like it's going to solve whatever it is that is the perceived problem right now. I strongly and lovingly encourage you to speak to a professional, speak to someone who isn't going to encourage that quote unquote short-term fix, right? And maybe you might pay an arm and a leg to do that. Trust me, we have talked and we continue to talk to people behind the scenes who have done those surgeries, who have made those actions and are on the other side of that, telling themselves like, I thought it was going to fix this, and realizing that they actually do not, at the root, they do not have a well-defined sense of self. That means that they are permeable to the social tides of influence of whatever other people perceive, that then becomes their own belief of who they are and their levels of attractiveness and their levels of beauty, and that their looks measure their sense of worth, and they don't self-accept themselves. They don't feel good in their own skin, and they just are consistently looking for the next thing. So get support if this is you, because we are going to be entering into a world where the quick fix, it's going to just be like the movie, right? It's going to be very easy and increasingly easier to get those surgeries done, to get those GLP-1 modifiers, to get those little things that don't have you actually doing any work. And that will just put you in an even bigger psychological hole, emotional hole, and sociological hole than the marketing might be telling you. So 3 questions that we prompted at Evolve Movie Club, where we actually talked about this movie, Uglies, launched in 2024, which is, like I said, written on that novel, was 3 questions that I want us to consider in this episode. Number 1, who really determines what is pretty? Number 2, what's one biggest consequence of beauty brainwashing? I want you to think about that and what you've experienced. And then the third thing, what did you wish you saw more of growing up regarding attractiveness, regarding beauty, regarding all of this external validation? And I specifically didn't put, what did you wish you heard? Because we all wish we heard something for sure. But what did you wish you saw more of? I think is a more powerful question. So with that being said, incredible episode to really sink on ever more so in this 2025 year where we are having extremely incredible advances in technology and in industries. Thanks a lot to technology. And all the more reason to touch base on getting to know yourself at the deepest levels and to understand, like episode number 373 gets into, how to tell if you're dissociating. Do you know when you're actually present with yourself, or do you know when you're just maybe unconsciously consuming something that you think is going to make you feel prettier or more handsome? So, B.
397, every people pleaser needs to know this. If this is something that you have been struggling with, if you know that you are really influenced by the people around you, it's causing you to not maybe make some of the best choices. It's not causing you to feel good about yourself. And you want to finally feel good about yourself. You want to be around people who actually care about you for you, not just what you look like, not some of these other stupid metrics, but the things that really matter, which is who you are at your core. And you want to be around people who are looking to care about something more and care about something deeper. Evolve Ventures Group Coaching is going to be launching in 2 weeks from today. July 24th is our official launch date. This is a once-a-year group that will sincerely help you change your life. It's a lot easier than you think. It's way cheaper than you think. Most programs like this cost at least $5,000, and they do not provide the outcomes that this will provide for you. We've had so many people go through this program. They said it was the best investment that they ever made. It was so much more affordable. They're so grateful they did it. They're going to bring their friends to do it next time. That could be you. So if you want to be a part of this once a year, very exclusive group, we only allow 10 people into the group. Click the description down below. The link is there to join. And if you have questions, send Emilia or I a DM on Instagram, Evolve with Emilia or Evolve with Bianca. You can email us. We cannot wait to hear from you. Or drop a comment down below if you're on YouTube and you're interested.
Powerful episode topic, extremely affordable opportunities for you to actually address those roots that we were talking about. And yes, of course, we will address that root in this program. So do not sit on the opportunity. Do not wait. Your future self will thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining this episode. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.